You might remember seeing a couple of videos on Twitter of Donkey Kong performing an up special while landing and becoming completely intangible throughout the remainder of the move. This is an incidence of shadow iframes in action. Shadow iframes occur when a special move transitions from the air to the ground on a specific frame, but only when the special move has unique aerial and grounded variants. The specific frame the transition needs to take place depends on the move. This is similar to the invincicopter phenomenon in Brawl, which could be triggered by landing at any point during aerial spinning Kong's intangibility. In Smash 4, this timing has been narrowed to only the last frame of intangibility, frame 6. While this might seem like too tight of a timing to land, this video from June, by DK Mang Konga, showcases him performing it consistently. What is important to note is Donkey Kong visibly transitions to the end leg animation of the grounded version, rather than experiencing unique landing leg. This will be helpful in determining what other moves can trigger shadow iframes. This phenomenon is not unique to Donkey Kong either. As you might expect from our channel, this technique also applies to Shulk and his down special, Vision. Like all counters, he has a small amount of intangibility while the counter hitbox is active. If he lands on the 8th frame of an aerial vision, again, frame 8 being the last frame of aerial vision's intangibility, he will be completely intangible for the remainder of the animation, unable to be attacked or grabbed by his opponent. At the moment, our best explanation for why shadow iframes exist is to do with how iframes are programmed into the game. Normally, there's a flag to turn off an intangible state of a move after a set number of frames. The game constantly checks if you become grounded and nullifies the intangibility if you do. However, landing on the very last active frame causes this flag to be missed, allowing the intangibility to last throughout the move. This also explains why other movement specials, even with unique aerial and grounded variants, cannot trigger shadow iframes. The game puts them into unique landing leg, and thus these flags to turn off intangibility are not needed. Of course, this is all just conjecture. However, when techniques such as grounded spike cancelling and vision sliding are considered, it seems as though the transitioning state from air to ground has a deep amount of interesting properties associated with it, many of which we do not fully understand yet.
There was a similar phenomenon that used to exist with Little Mac's KO punch. If you landed exactly on the last frame the hitbox was active, frame 12, the hitbox persisted on his hand throughout the entire animation of the move. Unfortunately for Little Mac, it was the weaker aerial hitbox that lingered. Because the grounded version of KO punch is active one frame earlier than the aerial version, it seems as though it is the same aerial to ground transition that caused this odd glitch. However, this has been patched out for some time. A similar incidence of these shadow hitboxes could actually be triggered by Shulk's Vision counterattack. Germ released a video last January of this occurring in doubles, resulting in 2 separate KOs from a single Vision. This is because he landed on just the right frame, 46, the last active frame of Aerial Vision's hitbox. This can be confirmed via frame skipping and observing the change of animation 46 frames after the counterattack begins. As expected, however, this is not a phenomenon that is easily replicable in practice, let alone intentionally in an actual match. We are unsure if this was patched out for all of these shadow hitbox variants, or just Little Mac's, but it applies to so few moves that it is hard to test. For example, another potential candidate for this shadow hitbox is Kirby's Hammer Flip. However, we have had no success in performing it. Does this mean it was patched for all hitboxes of special moves? Were custom moves affected? We aren't sure. Many special moves are difficult to test and have rather weak potential reward for both shadow hitboxes and iframes.
The iframes in Shulk's aerial counter typically begin on frame 7 and end on frame 8. If he lands on exactly the 8th frame of an aerial vision, these iframes will persist throughout the entirety of the move's animation. If uninterrupted, this can be up to frame 79, over a second of intangibility. Once any action is performed after the first actionable frame, Shulk loses this intangibility. However, he's capable of perfect shielding any hitbox inside of him, similar to shielding out of the iframes of a Malk. It is worth noting that the window in which vision will activate decreases with each use, from lasting for 36 frames to only 5 when fully depreciated. However, the iframes never depreciate. Keep these facts in mind if you decide to use this technique repeatedly. The most obvious application of shadow iframes only works under the condition the opponent lacks matchup knowledge. If they attempt to punish you during Vision's animation, you in turn can punish them. However, if this was the sole application, it wouldn't be very useful. Opponents would quickly learn to not fall for this bait repeatedly, and simply respect Vision. One of the more powerful applications is abusing the fact that you still have active counterframes while performing it. This means that you can safely attempt to vision your opponent with a read in situations where you would usually risk getting punished. This could include an opponent trying to land. If they land with an aerial, they will activate the counter. If they don't, you cannot be grabbed or otherwise punished for the incorrect read. This also applies to recovering opponents. If the recovery move often risks extending onto the stage, such as with Cloud, Ike, or another Shulk, you can time your vision so that they risk activating your counter. Even if they don't, they are incapable of punishing your attempt, making it a far more powerful option than a simple attempted vision. Perhaps a more unorthodox application is purposefully using Shadow Eye to contest an opponent's respawn invincibility with your own intangibility. This flips the scenario from you attempting to keep stage control while avoiding an invincible opponent into a situation where both parties respect each other, essentially maintaining neutral, even after an opponent's respawn. However, this is merely theory crafting, as this sort of strategy has not been put to proper testing in high-level matches. Finally, abusing the length of intangibility given to you by Shadow iframes could be useful in stalling strategies. This could include stalling out time-dependent threats from your opponents, such as Little Mac's KO Punch or Shulk's Monado Arts, or attempting to time out an opponent. For Shulk specifically, he could use this time to stall for a Monado Art that is currently on cooldown. Several setup methods, which we will discuss in a moment, utilize Monado Jump and Monado Shield, which are great arts for stalling. These are just a few ideas. With more exploration of the technique, there might be even more applications for specific matchups and situations.
One of the key things to keep in mind is that even if your opponent is aware of the technique, the vision itself is still either unpunishable or hard to punish by the majority of the cast. Any physical hitboxes inside of you when vision is over will be perfect shielded when the intangibility ends. This leaves grabs, but grab hitboxes do not last very long, leaving the input to be very tight. However, some characters have other methods of getting around this. Wario can just hold B inside of you until the intangibility is over. Kirby can do the same by inhaling it. Since this means Kirby will get your Monado Arts, this is pretty bad for you. Note that he must do this without relying on the wind box. This applies to King DDD as well, but he gets less from it. Diddy Kong can put his banana at your feet and punish as he wishes. This can either force you to chirp immediately, or if misspaced, if you decide to shield, he can push you into the banana with the hitbox. Interestingly, Pac-Man can use his trampoline to bring you out of your shadow iframes before they are even over. Robbins can force you to shield Arc Fire, then grab you before you can act. This is also something Mega Man can do with Leaf Shield. Another, more elaborate punish is activating vision purposefully, but with a projectile while out of range of his attack. Shulk does not keep the intangibility while vision is activated, and the opponent has anywhere from 35 to 51 frames to punish it after the hitbox is done. Though the projectile does not necessarily have to be out of range if you roll or dodge the fairly slow hitbox. However, it does take either foresight or good reaction time with a fast projectile to allow this punish. This becomes less of an option the more vision is staled. Shadow iframes can also be punished by predicting what Shulk will do after the iframes are over, and not attempting any punishes while intangibility frames are still active. Shulk has an advantage in being able to act out whenever he chooses, but reading his option out of it is still powerful. Finally, if the Shulk is using an unsafe way to set it up, like repeated full hop up airs, this usually can be punished with relative ease. For the Shulk, you want to keep in mind the situation, and your spacing from the opponent when deciding whether to use this or not, and what method to use. Overall, in most situations, shadow iframes are a very safe option if used smartly, and if set up in a way that does not allow for Shulk to be punished prior to the iframes.
There are countless setups for Shadow Eye. We have already found a fair number, but the majority are yet to be found. A few methods can use buffering mechanics to make Shadow Eye easier, but there are far fewer ways of doing this than vision sliding. We think that the most use of this tech will come from unbuffered methods, which can be used in a variety of situations. To save on time, we will only discuss a few of both kinds of methods in this video. The remaining methods, and any new methods discovered post-release, will be available on Shulk 101, with explanations of how to perform them. The most basic buffering method is vanilla full hop up air, buffered from a jump squat. Once performed, you should see Shulk visibly flashing throughout the vision. This input should be simple. If you are having difficulty buffering the up air, such as accidentally inputting an up smash, you would benefit by taking a look at our Shulk control scheme video. Another buffered method is town and city side platforms. Just short hop down with 2 air dodges. The duck hunt method you saw earlier is also a buffered method. On the second lowest platform, Monado jump full hop and 3 air dodges. Both of these methods are nice due to being performed only with air dodges. This gives you both additional intangibility prior to the vision, as well as allows you to drift before landing, making it more difficult to be intercepted than other offensive methods. You cannot accidentally fastfall either. With the unbuffered methods, the goal is to time the press of down special to right before you land on the ground. While this might seem tricky at first, with practice the timing can become second nature. You can also time vision from drop downs from platforms. By luck, this works for all lower in height platforms, except for Duck Hunt's bush. It works by jumping off a variety of platform heights to other heights as well. Some methods involve buffering a double jump after an aerial, and then timing vision on landing. The one we showcased earlier is speed full hop fair, double jump, and then timed vision on landing. Another quite useful method is Monado shield short hop air dodge, and visioning 1 frame after the first actionable frame. Again, for many more useful methods, check out Shulk 101.
Shadow Eye!
If you found this video interesting or helpful, please leave a like and share it with others. If you have any questions regarding the technique, or want to share your own experience with shadow iframes, let us know in a comment. Of course, subscribe if you want to stay up to date on all of our content. We have a lot more on the way. And, as always, thanks for watching.